You say you haven't been the same since you had your little crash, but you might feel better if they gave you some cash. The more I think about it, old Billy was right. Let's kill all the lawyers, kill them tonight. You don't want to work, you want to live like a kid.
Well, heck, there's my phone.
There you go.
I've been looking all over for it. Sorry, I was trying
It's
to
okay,
track down my
man.
phone.
Good to see you.
All right, man. Good to be here.
It's time for episode. What episode?
I think it's
is
14. Is it 14 now?
Episode
or is
14 or 15?
Losing?
16.
16.
Gosh,
Episode
yeah, we're
16
way up
of,
there.
of Two Marks. And
One mic
One
or two marks, one mic.
is there a comment in there
I
somewhere?
don't know. It depends on how you know. Probably either way. Depends on what you want to do. All right, man.
Every month we get the Tennessee Jury Verdict Reporter, and the first thing we do is look for cases in Hamilton County because we like to know what's going on with juries in Hamilton County. And there's a very interesting case that happened in Hamilton County that was filed 3 or 4 years ago by some attorneys that we know. Buddy Presley was a lawyer for the plaintiff, and Mark Kinsman was a lawyer for the defendant.
Correct,
so
correct.
It's interesting when we know the lawyers involved, and it's interesting when we kind of know the parties involved also, because the defendant was Arnold Stoltz. He was city manager of Saudi Daisy,
Correct.
and was it his brother, or his brother was a lawyer? Is a lawyer
I
in
think
town?
so.
You know, and so this is a lawsuit that was filed. The facts of the case basically are this. The defendant was driving this janky 45-year-old CJ Jeep.
Correct,
Okay?
correct.
No brake lights, no turn signal, no tail lights. And it was in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Boulevard. We all know where that is, Dayton Pike. And the sun was about to go down.
Mhm.
The plaintiff was riding his motorcycle.
Right.
The Jeep was stopped, but like I said, there's no brake lights, no tail lights, and no turn signal. However, according to the testimony, Mr. Stoltz did have his left hand out.
Right.
It seemed
As a statute allows you to do.
Right. But there was some controversy about whether or not his turn signal actually worked.
Right.
At trial, he said it was working.
Right.
But that's kind of suspicious. If it's working, why is your left hand out? the
Well,
window?
it's two. Your left hand out to turn. You put your palm down, supposedly to show that you're stopping. But you know
Right.
what? Those
Yeah.
are horse and buggy days, and those aren't the best ways to tell somebody you're turning or
Those
stopping.
are horse
So,
and buggy
yeah,
days.
you need to make certain that
Maybe-
your turn signals are working and your brake lights are
Yeah,
working.
absolutely, and they weren't, and so the plaintiff was traveling down the road, and let's see, what was his name? His name was Norcia, 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 traveling down the roads, could not stop in time,
Right.
and decided to lay his motorcycle down instead of taking a broad impact, right in the back. Laid it down and broke his hip.
And understand, as a person who formerly rode motorcycles, you can be put into some bad situations as
Did
a
you ever
motorcycle
find
driver.
yourself in a bad situation?
You do, because people don't always
you?
see you, and that wasn't. Oh yeah, I have been.
Well,
Never been in a crash.
Okay.
But oftentimes motorcyclists are left with some bad choices.
Right,
When
right.
they're faced with a situation that's an emergency. You either swerve left, which is usually not a good idea. Usually swerving in the oncoming
Right.
traffic, you're doing that. You can swerve right, but that can depend on what's to the right of you.
Right.
You can do nothing and impact the vehicle, or you can lay the motorcycle down, as this guy chose to
Right,
do,
right.
which is something you're taught to do as a
Yeah,
motorcyclist
yeah.
in the event you want to avoid worst case
Right,
scenario.
yeah.
And that's what this guy did. He laid his
Broke
motorcycle
his
down.
hip, lots of medical bills, $150,000 in medical bills.
Right.
So that's a big case. That's what we refer to as a flamingo around here.
Right, right.
As far as liability, in my mind, I don't know what the accident report said, but that would be a case that I would take.
It
I
would
would
be.
take that case, as far as, as his lawyer, as a plaintiff lawyer with big damages and bad brake lights, no tail lights on a janky old Jeep, I'd take that case and just, try to work it out the best way I can.
One thing this case illustrates, and I know you're going to talk a little bit more about the outcome, is what juries do in Tennessee is you're comparing the fault of each driver to one another.
Right.
To how much did each contribute
Right.
to a crash. So you have a Jeep that may not have proper tail lights or turning indicators.
Yeah.
You have a motorcyclist, who knows how fast he may have been
Right.
going, but faced with an emergency, swerve right, swerve left, impact the vehicle or lay it down, made a decision to lay it down. And it just goes to show what jurors,
Yeah.
as members of that jury,
Now,
need to do is compare
what-
the fault of each individual driver. In a
And
case like
with
this.
that being said, I would not have tried this case though. You know, I would have tried to settle for a fair amount of money at a mediation.
Right.
Because you're exactly right.
Right.
You don't know what a jury's going to do, because after all, he's the one that caused the accident. You know, Mr. Stoltz was just sitting there minding his own business in a Jeep that with the sun had not gone down yet. You know, and so there you have to consider that there's going to be some fault placed upon the motorcyclist,
Right.
because he did not stop and he laid it down himself.
Right.
It's
So-
kind of like he assumed the risk compared to fault. You know, you put it down like there. So you know, you go to court. I don't know what kind of settlement negotiations, if any, they had, but you go to court, you're looking at, you know, fault being placed on the plaintiff, the guy driving the motorcycle.
Right.
Now, if fault was, say you got a verdict of $500,000 and they placed 20% of fault on the motorcyclist,
Right.
$500,000 would be reduced by 20%,
Right.
which is $100,000,
Right.
right? And so his verdict would still be $400,000.
He would receive 80% of that $500,000. However, in Tennessee, if you're 50% or more at fault,
Right.
you
Zero.
don't reduce it by the 50%
You're
or
done.
60% as done in this case.
No.
It's zero.
If
So-
if you're 50% at fault for the accident that happened, you will get a zero verdict. No
And-
money.
And in this particular case, the jury came back based upon comparing the faults, came back with 60% on the motorcyclist, 40% on the automobile. And so that should, you know, the jury could have come back 60-40 the other way.
Right.
This was a close
It
call.
was, no, that was a close call.
Close
It
call,
was a
but
close call.
it shows.
And I think that the plaintiff lawyer just rolled the dice and was hoping, you know, 60-40, 70-30 the other way. Now, the plaintiff lawyer, you know, probably should have, you know, stood up in front of the jury and kind of softened the blow by accepting some responsibility for what happened.
Right, you can
know?
always do that, but you know, it goes to show too, you know, there may not have been an opportunity for this plaintiff's lawyer to really settle this case, because, you know, if you've got $150,000 in medical expenses, you've got you know, all these expenses that may have been incurred by your client, there may not have been an offer that was made that he could really have accepted.
Right.
So sometimes in a case
Yeah.
like this, you may be forced to trial.
Yeah.
And hey, this could have happened here, but you know, in a particular case like this, you got to do your best to
Right.
prepare.
Yeah.
This jury, though, could have just as easily come back 60-40 in favor of the motorcyclist, 70-30 in favor of the motorcyclist. Could have been, but
Yeah.
the reason why we're bringing this case out to talk about is it shows how compared to fault in Tennessee, even in close call cases,
Right.
it can result in a defense verdict
Right.
where the plaintiff gets nothing. And just as easily, if you had flipped that just a little bit, and if
Yeah.
he had only been 40% at fault, that $500,000 suddenly is 60%
Sure.
of that $500,000, or $300,000 would have gone to the plaintiff in this case.
We know firsthand that juries in Hamilton County are very conservative.
Right.
They don't award big dollars. They tend to lean toward the defense side. Sometimes we describe juries as being, you know, stingy, unsympathetic, and suspicious.
Well, they can be, but you know what? We also find with juries and jurors in this area is they expect people to follow the rules.
Right.
So if you're a rule follower and it's resulted in you're still injured and you're following the rules, then the juries are
Right.
they're gonna award a verdict in favor of the rule follower.
Right.
And that's kind of what's kind of crazy about this case is there could have been. We know there was some rule following that may not have been done, or lack
Yeah,
of rule following
right.
on behalf of
Yeah.
the Jeep. We don't know from the facts that we've seen exactly what
You're
rules
well,
that
it's-
the motorcycles may not have followed.
It just shows me that you know, it's risky to take some cases to a jury because you have no idea what the jury is going to do.
That's
And
right.
So you know, based
And-
upon our experience in
and-
doing this.
And one of the important things to make that decision of whether you're going to take it to a jury, even in iffy cases, is if you're prepared, if the other side knows you're prepared. I'm not saying that the plaintiff's lawyer in this case wasn't prepared, but one of the best things that you can do, and what we try to focus on in our practice, is you start preparing from day one,
Right.
and the better prepared you are, the better the outcome is going to be
Yeah.
for you
Right.
when you get to the steps of the court.
You know, and this case also had experts too. Each side had an expert as to how the accident occurred.
Right.
Which was they spent money to work this case up, and really I think you've changed my mind, John Mark. I think that I probably would have rolled with this case also. I certainly would have. I mean,
think that
the damages and everything else.
It's hard when you know the person that the other party may have done something wrong, and you have an expert that's supporting
Right.
your version of what occurred. It's hard not to take that to
Right.
trial, and I think Mr. Perry did the right.
Yeah,
He did the right
absolutely.
thing in this
Absolutely.
case.
If you have any questions,
Mr. Presley, he did the right thing in this case.
If you have any questions about jury verdicts or jury trials or lawsuits, give us a call. We're here 24/7. This has been another episode of Two Marks, and
One mic or two marks, one mic.
we'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Get out!